Here, Corpus Christi, Texas. We got our weekly Kettlebell Expert Secrets episode. I'm excited to be coming to you guys today. We got a pretty interesting topic. Could be a frustrating topic, could be a controversial topic, but who knows? We're going to dive right in. And today we're going to be talking about why your shoulder mobility may or may not be working. You know, why it probably isn't working. And I think there's a few little things to consider whenever we're working on a shoulder mobility. So really quick, the shoulder. Let's talk about the shoulder really quick, because this is the shoulder is one of the most, if not the most versatile joint that we have. It is right. It's the most mobile, has the most range of motion, but it also is almost the most sensitive joint that we have. It can get injured really easily. On top of being injured really easily, it's kind of a pain in the butt, and it can take some time for it to recover. Right? I know there's a joke. So one of the organizations that I'm a part of, that I'm really big with, and we run our whole entire facility here in Corpus. Hardstyle is based around what's called the FMS. FMS stands for Functional Movement Systems. So FMS is essentially a 7-point test or movement system that we test for movement competency. We test for how well people move. We test from there. It allows us to customize the training program for someone that's looking to get stronger, looking to lose some weight, etc. So the FMS, there's an actual running joke in the FMS. Oh, really quick, if everybody could let me know, with all the craziness that's happening with Hurricane Harvey and everything, if everybody could let me know if you can hear me or if you can see me. I just want to make sure that the internet and everything here is working. So with that said, there's a running joke in the FMS community that I think Brett Jones usually asks everybody in every certification, every event I've been to, is who here has ever had a shoulder injury? And usually when he asks that question, a handful of people, if there's 100 people in the room, like half the room will raise their hand. Yeah, I've had a shoulder injury. Then he'll say, and for those of you that didn't raise your hands, you currently have a shoulder injury. Because you're in so much pain, you couldn't raise your arm. So, the shoulder is a pretty touchy joint, okay? And it's got the most range of motion, and it's also can be one of the hardest injuries to overcome, right? Everybody's very familiar with the rotator cuff, right? The rotator cuff is made up of, 4 small muscle groups that make up the rotator cuff. We're not going to go into all the science and musculature of the shoulder, insertion points of origination, all that kind of stuff. We're not going to go into any of that. But shoulder mobility, if you're trying to specifically stretch the shoulder, that's not necessarily going to increase range of motion, and that's not necessarily going to improve movement. There's many different movement systems out there that advocate, foam rolling this or stretching that or using bands on this. We're not going to get into a whole lot of that either. I'm just going to give you some observations that I've made and my experience as a coach on the things that, errors that I've made, but also one of the things that I've noticed that most people struggle with increasing their mobility of their shoulders. So a few of the topics we're going to talk about in today's episode. We're going to talk about I've got five little bullet points that we're going to cover, 2 of which are tied together, and one of which is going to basically cover all 5. So point number 1 is having a lack of strength. A lack of strength, and we're not talking about the ability to bench press stuff. We're not talking about the ability to military press things. When I'm talking about strength, we're talking about upper back strength, reflexive core strength, etc. So a lack of strength is one reason why your shoulder mobility is not working. This one here I think is key, and I think is actually behind, that the culprit behind everything is poor posture. We're going to get into talking about posture and the effects of that on shoulder mobility. We're going to talk about lack of T-spine mobility. Okay, T-spine is short for a thoracic spine. So the thoracic portion of your spine, which is that upper, right in the middle of the chest, upper back, rib cage, like all that is our thoracic portion. We're going to talk about thoracic mobility and how that plays a part in increasing our shoulder mobility. And then the last point we're going to talk about is, pain. You want to make sure that you avoid going into pain. And I think that is something that can really keep people back from increasing the mobility of their shoulders. Just going to make a quick check here. So let's get started. Let's talk about poor posture. I think poor posture is the culprit behind everything. So because we sit as a society, we sit all day. This can definitely begin to tighten and weaken things. So I'm going to turn to the side here. And as you notice, if I begin to sit, right, nowadays we sit a lot as a society, or we're constantly on our phones. Even sports, right? We start to get this forward head posture like this, right? Sports, MMA, boxing, these types of sports that require you to be in these rounded positions specific to the sport. Sometimes as athletes or competitive, high-level fighters, sometimes they're so used to being in this posture that they never leave that posture. They never leave their sport, right? So even cyclists, runners, being in those postures. So a cyclist is always in a flexed position, right? They're always rounded over, holding onto the handlebars. Their hips are always in a flexed position. So it's almost like they're sitting a lot because their hips are always flexed. The hips are connected to the shoulders, okay? So if your hips become tight, that can actually affect your shoulders as well, which can lead to keeping you from increasing your shoulder mobility, okay? So poor posture, again, from sitting down for long periods of time, from forward head posture, being on our cell phones, maybe we work a desk job, we're always typing. That's one key thing that I think is behind everything, from the reason why your shoulders aren't increasing your shoulder mobility. Even breathing. Breathing has a direct effect or correlation to posture. So there's some crazy statistic, like I think we breathe like 26,000 times a day. And I think it would be pretty important to make sure that we're breathing properly, right? So nowadays, a lot of us breathe with our chest. So we breathe from the chest, and the problem with that is the muscles responsible for breathing into our chest are actually more of our emergency muscles, the muscles along the neck. Those muscles kick in to help you breathe in a time of fear, like a fight or flight situation. So if you're ever almost in a car accident, or you're almost going to fall, or something like scares you, you'll start panicking, because this is where we carry a lot of our emotion up here in our chest, and we'll begin to breathe up into the chest, and that can begin to tighten the neck. So the neck is taking it a little bit further, deeper down the hole. The neck is connected to our shoulders. Whatever affects our neck will affect our shoulders. So if we begin to breathe shallow and we begin to breathe into our chest, that will tighten up the neck, which will lead to tightening up the shoulders, and that will lead to weakening our grip. It all just kind of stems down. So the neck is that circuit breaker. Basically, the neck is like the circuit breaker for our shoulders and our grip. So when we're in this posture and we're in this forward-headed position, that will begin to tighten up the thoracic area of our spine, and that will lead to a decrease in range of motion, right? Or also known as mobility, right? Being able to actively move the joint. Being able to actively move the joint, right? That's another, that's coming from the posture. So you can do all the shoulder mobility in the world. You can do all the kettlebell arm bars. You can do all the get-ups. You can do all these kettlebell shoulder mobility drills, from arm bars to crooked arm bars to get-ups and portions of the get-up. You can do all that till you're blue in the face, and yet you will not increase your shoulder mobility because your posture has not improved, or you do those exercises, but then you kind of go right back to that same posture that caused the problem in the first place. So that is probably more of the root cause. Okay, so the goal is to always find that root cause. So sitting, breathing, specific sports require a certain posture, and if we don't ever leave that posture, then that will lead to a decrease in shoulder mobility. Let's talk about strength. Having a lack of strength has a direct effect on shoulder mobility. And like I said, when I'm talking about strength, I'm not talking about bench press strength. I'm not talking about deadlifting strength. I'm not talking about being able to press heavy kettlebells overhead. Again, this stems from posture. So when we begin to have this forward rounded position, we begin to round from the chest and the upper back. What happens is we begin to tighten up the muscles of the front of the body, right? Our anterior muscles, like the pecs, right? Once those become tight, the muscles of the upper back become weak. Okay, so in the fitness world, right, in the strength world, we call the muscles that become weak, we consider them, and we call them underactive. The muscles of the back, the muscles of the back become underactive, okay, because we're rounding, so we're not actively using them. The muscles of the front become overactive because they're constantly under tension, they're constantly flexed, they're constantly on, so they become overactive. So what happens is that causes a muscle imbalance, right? So it's like, imagine a seesaw, kind of like a seesaw. And the goal is to keep that seesaw balanced. But if you're using your chest too much because you're rounding, you're now really high, really weak up here, and all your weight is down here, right? The goal is to keep those muscles balanced, kind of like a seesaw. So what happens is we become overactive, underactive, that creates a muscle imbalance, and now becomes weak. We now become weak from our upper back. So that will lead to a reduction or reduce our reflexive core strength as well, and reflexive stability of the shoulder, or motor control is another fancy term you may hear strength coaches say. So whenever when our posture starts to deteriorate, we start to lose upper back strength, and we start to lose reflexive stability, reflexive strength of the shoulder. And no matter how much, again, no matter how many arm bars, no matter how many Turkish get-ups we do with kettlebells or breakdowns or variations of the get-up, we will not make a change in movement. We will not increase mobility, because we haven't fixed our posture. When we fix our posture, that will lead to increasing our reflexive strength, right? Motor control of the shoulders, upper back, etc. So if we don't fix the posture, that will not help us increase our reflexive strength of the upper back, and also help us to open up and release the muscles that are overactive on the front of our body, like our pecs. The pecs, they actually pull the shoulders forward like this, okay? Just kind of like a bench press. It's kind of like, right, flexing this chest portion in right here. So you can do all the kettlebell drills. You can do all the arm bars. You can do all the kettlebell bent arm bars or crooked arm bars. You can do all of the breakdowns and regressions of the get up, but yet you will not increase shoulder mobility if you haven't improved your posture, which leads to improving reflexive core and upper back strength. Okay. Once we've done that, we'll start to make a change in movement. So let's talk next about the next point is lack of thoracic mobility, also known as T-spine mobility. So the thoracic portion, see if you can see me here, this upper chest and upper back portion, like the rib cage, that whole portion of your spine should be able to flex, it should be able to extend, and it should be able to rotate from side to side. Well, when our posture deteriorates, we begin to lose that, like I talked about, upper back, reflexive core strength, reflexive, shoulder motor control. When we begin to lose that, okay, we begin to see a decrease in extension because we're always flexed in this position, right? So we're actually overusing the flexibility of our thoracic area. So we can no longer extend and we can no longer rotate. So in order for the shoulders to increase their range of motion, you have to be able to extend through the upper back and extend through the thoracic area in order for those shoulders to increase their mobility, okay? Scapula's got to be able to depress and drop, right? If the scapulas and shoulders are always rounded forward, it's going to be hard to increase that shoulder mobility no matter how many kettlebell arm bars, crooked arm bars, and get-up regressions that you do. The T-spine should also be able to rotate. If you cannot rotate and you're locked up there, it's also going to decrease shoulder mobility. So here's a little test that you can do. I always like to give people like a physical or a visual, this is actually more of a physical cue. So I'm going to drop the camera just a tad here. So what I want you to do this little test. If you're, for those that are watching right now, do this little test. Take your arms and raise them straight overhead just like this. Okay, so this obviously is a good demonstration of proper mobility of the shoulders and thoracic extension by being able to bring your arms overhead, right? So if you can do that, you got a pretty decent range of motion and you've got a good extensibility of the thoracic area. Now, I want to show you how critical and how impactful poor posture is on shoulder mobility. So we already did the first test, arms overhead, bang, perfect, we got it. Now what I want you to do is I want you to round your shoulders forward like this, kind of like you're sitting in a chair, right? Maybe you're working at a desk or you're always on your phone, right? Round your shoulders forward, don't leave that posture, and raise your arms overhead. And you've decreased your range of motion probably by about 45 degrees. So I'm gonna turn sideways. I'll turn sideways here so you see if you can see me. So hands overhead, you can see good mobility. My bicep is lined up with my ear or even slightly behind my ear, right? So pretty good shoulder mobility, thoracic, etc., right? So pretty good. Now, if I round like this, I round and I protrude my head forward from this poor posture. Now I'm going to raise my arms overhead. I'm not exaggerating this. Look at what happens to the ability to, look at what happens to my ability to raise my arms overhead. That's it. That's all I got. Why? Because I'm not extending through my thoracic to allow me here. This can lead into many other problems, not just poor shoulder mobility. Whenever we cannot flex, extend, and rotate through the thoracic area, what will happen is that mobility's got to come somewhere, right? Like we've got to be able to turn around We've got to be able to reach over the back, like of the back seat to get something. If in order to do this rotation, right, in order to do certain extension to reach something overhead, if we're locked up in those three actions, flexion, extension, and rotation, the mobility has to come from somewhere. Where do you think that mobility is going to come from? The lower back, the lumbar. So the lumbar, or the lower back, is the one portion of your spine that should not be flexing, it should not be rotating, and it should not be going into hyperextension. But it will go into those actions if we're locked up thoracically, okay? That can lead to lower back pain, that can lead to injury. If we're swinging kettlebells, if we're pressing kettlebells, if we're trying to work on kettlebell arm bars, we're trying to work on portions of the getup, that is only going to lead us to injury because we'll now begin to move from the lower back, from the lumbar, rather than the thoracic. So we need to focus on opening that thoracic area with flexion, extension, and rotation. So that is another reason why your shoulder mobility is probably not improving, because you're locked up here thoracically. So again, all this stems from posture, right? Poor posture, forward head position leads to lack of strength, lack of reflexive core strength, lack of upper back strength. That will lead to locking up our thoracic area, the T-spine. It'll lock us up. We will not be able to extend. We will not be able to rotate optimally to actually open up the chest to allow the hands to go overhead. This will lock you up. You can say goodbye to snatching. You can say goodbye to any kind of pressing, whether it's strict press, push press, or jerk. Say goodbye to bent pressing. All these different kettlebell exercises, gone. Arm bars, crooked arm bars, get-ups, those won't do you almost any good if you cannot move your thoracic spine. And all that stems from posture. Last point I'd like to cover is going into pain. If you have pain, let me know if you can hear me. I hope I'm not freezing up. It looks like I'm freezing up on my end. If you can hear me, let me know. Looks like my internet's kind of chopping in and out. I'm about to wrap it up. So going into pain, this is another thing that can keep you from improving your shoulder mobility, okay? If you have pain in your shoulder, maybe it's an injury, or maybe it's posture, right? Posture is leading to that pain, like you're rounded and you're still trying to press, but it's kind of impinging the shoulder. That is another reason why you can't, your body is going to seek to avoid pain at all costs. So if you have shoulder pain, guess what? Your body's not going to allow you to mobilize that joint. It's not going to allow you, it's not going to take the brakes off of that shoulder, off of the whatever is going on in that area. So if you are in pain, seek out a qualified professional to clear you out of that pain. Because guess what? If you're having pain in the shoulders, you're no longer a fitness problem. You are now a health problem. And just a special note, if you are working with a trainer or if you're working with a coach and they're trying to treat you of your pain, they're trying to do, soft tissue work, or they're trying to do, they are going beyond their scope of expertise, and you should run for the hills. If you're working with a coach or a trainer that is not some kind of clinician or has some kind of medical license to actually touch you, run. We work with several chiropractors. We have a couple of MDs that we network with that we're able to refer our students to in case something like that happens, which is why we use the FMS screen. We're able to screen people, see if there is pain. From there, work with what we can work with. Whatever portions are in pain, we're working with that clinician to get them cleared out. So with that said, avoid going into pain. If you have pain in your shoulders, do not try to mobilize or do anything or crank on your thoracic spine or crank on your shoulders by stretching them with stretch bands or anything like that. First, get healthy. Like I said, if you're in pain, you're a health problem. You are no longer a fitness problem. Once you're cleared and you have a clean bill of health from your chiropractor or physical therapist or whoever it is that you see that is qualified to treat that, once you are cleared, guess what? They can no longer do anything for you. You're no longer a health problem. You're now a fitness problem. And that's where people like myself or a qualified coach that is experienced in either FMS or some kind of movement qualification can help you to now increase your mobility. So those are just a few points, very common mistakes that I see and that I've made a ton of in the very beginning was, even though we were working on specific shoulder mobility exercises with kettlebells, that's one of the great things about using kettlebells, right? Not only are they a strength and a conditioning tool, right? You can use them for fat loss, for building maximum strength with presses and front squats, and you can build crazy endurance with snatches and cleans and jerks and swings. But they're also a great mobility and stability tool. You can use it as a mobility tool to help improve the quality of your movement, right? But none of that works if your posture is poor. None of that works if you have weak upper back strength. It can help, but you have to, you're going to be limited on a lot of those ranges of motion if your posture is out, you have a lack of strength, upper back strength, core, reflexive core strength, you have a lack of thoracic mobility, etc. So I'm just going to run through really quick what we talked about today. We talked about the reasons why your shoulders are not working is because you have poor posture. That poor posture, whether it's from sport, whether it's sport related, sitting in a chair long periods of time, always on your phone, typing, working, whatever it is, poor posture is a reason why, and I believe is a culprit and the root cause as to why your shoulder mobility is not improving. Having a lack of strength, and I'm not talking about maximum strength, I'm talking about upper back, motor control, reflexive core strength. Having a lack of T-spine mobility, right? The ability to flex, extend, and rotate from the thoracic area, which again, all leads from posture. That is a reason why your shoulder mobility is not working. And the last one is going into pain. If you're going into pain, while you're trying to increase mobility of the shoulder, thoracic, whatever it is, your body will not let you go there because it's going to try to avoid pain at all costs. So if you are in pain, seek out a qualified professional that can help you and clear you and give you a clean bill of health. That way you are no longer a health problem. You are now simply a fitness problem, and individuals like myself can help you. So guys, that's pretty much a wrap. That was our episode today, Kettlebell Expert Secrets, the secrets behind why your shoulder mobility is not working. As normal, if you're looking to improve your strength, your conditioning, you're at a loss, you don't know what type of exercises that you should be doing, I highly encourage you to check out our kettlebell workout snacks. Our kettlebell workout snack is a compilation of some of my best 4-week, there are 8 4-week kettlebell programs that take no more than 10 to 15 minutes to do for when you only have 10 to 15 minutes. So I highly encourage you, grab kettlebell workout snacks. You can grab it from my website on our homepage. If you go to hardstylekettlebell.com, on the homepage you can see the kettlebell workout snacks. From there you can get your very own copy. Thank you guys for tuning in. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Here is the link one more time. So again, if you're at a loss, you don't know what kettlebell workouts you should be doing, you don't know where to start, you don't know how long you should be working out, you can go to my website right now, hardstylekettlebell.com/KB-workout.snacks, or just go to hardstylekettlebell.com on the homepage and you can grab your very own copy for free from our website. That's pretty much all I got for you guys today. Tomorrow we have our next episode of Hardstyle Live. Be sure to tune in for that. Bye guys, have a great one. Bye.